I hope that this is the week where guys only come back from injury. I know it's a pipe dream. It's not a thing that actually happens in reality. Someone's always going to get hurt. But I hope this is the week where mostly guys come back from injury and we don't see too many more. I'd love a 0 in that column, but too many more go down. Welcome one, welcome all to Fantasy NBA Today. It's a Sports Ethos presentation. I'm your host, Dan Bespris, at Dan Bespris on Twitter. I think most of you that are listening or watching this show these days probably already know where I'm at on social media, but come hang out with me over there. We do an awful lot of stuff. And actually, right as we're going on air, we got a Kevin Durant update. So I guess we might as well start the show with that. KD, and this is a Shams tweet. I'm just going to read it verbatim here. Kevin Durant is making progress in his recovery from MCL sprain as planned and will be reevaluated again in 2 weeks. So, all right. I mean, that's kind of what we expected. There was almost never a chance that he was going to be back in 2 weeks from an MCL sprain. But at least things are apparently going according to plan. My hope, and I don't know that, I mean, this may end up dragging out to 6 weeks when all is said and done. But my hope is that in another 2 weeks, which would be right around the trade deadline, we get a report on KD. That'll be 2 days before the deadline, actually. We get a report on KD that's like, hey, he's doing really well, and we'll hope to have him back within the next week. That's my hope. So, like, between 4 and 5 weeks is the target that I'm hoping for. 6 would be a lot like last year, I guess. And honestly, 6 would be kind of tough. That's a long absence. That's basically what the Anthony Davis absence is looking like, because he's probably going to be back at some point later this week. So that's the Kevin Durant update, which is kind of a no update, but at least things haven't gone the wrong direction with him. Today is all about dudes coming back. But I don't have any big overarching thoughts on this stuff. So why don't we just launch straight headlong into a Monday recap, and I'll pause briefly on the 2 main names, which you guys already know. Jonathan Isaac and Khris Middleton each made their return on Monday night. Played limited minutes. No surprise there. Middleton was 15 minutes and 19 seconds. Jonathan Isaac was supposed to be between 8 and 10 minutes. They pushed him up near the 10-minute mark. He actually looked surprisingly good. So let's just start with that one. First of all, Orlando coming out of nowhere to beat a Boston Celtics team that admittedly is a little bit shorthanded. Celtics were without Robert Williams. They actually listed Williams out as injury management for this game, which honestly, that's a really big relief, because that means he might play in their next ball game, which is tonight. So we might get Robert Williams back with only 1 game off for his, I guess, what we're going to refer to as a very, very mild hyperextension of his knee. So apparently not doing all that poorly. Maybe he's in, maybe he's out. I don't know that that's going to happen. But again, the fact that they didn't list him out for the knee hyperextension and instead listed it as injury management, I thought was a good little tidbit. No Marcus Smart in that ball game either. Jason Tatum left holding his ribs briefly, but he did come back and played 38 minutes, so apparently he was fine. Things went generally according to plan. Al Horford, I was hoping for just a little bit more there, like maybe a blocked shot. But honestly, the Celtics as a team really didn't have a particularly good fantasy game, so I'm not super worried about it. Grant Williams, what do we get out of him? I mean, it's just not that exciting fantasy-wise. Derek White is the play, with Malcolm Brogdon also out due to personal reasons, so he could be back in the next one. But still, even just Marcus Smart being out, for me at least, is enough to get Derek White into my lineup. That's enough. He really just needs 1 guard out in front. And, White didn't play a ton of minutes yesterday. Peyton Pritchard played 31 off the bench. The units he was a part of were just doing a little better for Boston. But a lot of that came down to kind of the starters units versus other ones. The Jalen Brown mixture teams were getting throttled for whatever reason. Overall, Derek White, hang on to him, I would think, for basically the duration of Marcus Smart's injury. It'll be a little up and down, but he's a guard that can block shots. He's an across-the-board fantasy producer, and that makes him really interesting. But I know what you guys are thinking. Dan, would you please hurry up and frickin' talk about Jonathan Isaac? So, yeah, I will. J.I. looked really, really good in yesterday's ball game. But there's a few pieces of this. Piece number one is that he didn't really take minutes away from the regulars. Paolo Banchero still got his 36, Wendell Carter Jr. 33, Franz 33, Fultz 32. That was all fine. The minutes appear to be, at least, and again, Isaac only played 10 minutes in this game, so it's hard to make a huge read on it. But they appear to be largely coming, one here, one there, one here, one there kind of thing. And they're just sort of plucking minutes from different players, and that's how they're going to pull it all together. Maybe 2 minutes from Bol, and a couple from Mo Wagner, and a few from Gary Harris, and then other guys like a Terrence Ross didn't even get into the ball game. So you're going to see them pulling from these guys. And my assumption is that as Isaac very slowly gets ramped up, it's going to be an extraordinarily slow process. Like this was 8 to 10 minutes and he was sucking wind. Next one's going to be like 12, 14. It'll probably go up by like a minute, basically, free ball game. So that's why when I was talking about him on recent shows and even over on social media, I was like, look, you basically have to assume with Isaac that even once he makes his return, you're still stashing another 3 weeks, another 9 to 10 ball games until he's up to a number of minutes that you can kind of trust him to throw him into a lineup. This is on the roto side. On the head-to-head side, he was never an ad. It's going to be too hard because you can't leave him in an IL slot right now, and he's going to be playing 11 minutes. And you're like, but Dan, in 10 minutes yesterday, he had 10 points, 3 boards, 2 steals, and 2 3-pointers. And to that, I would say, yes, everything that I saw on Isaac last night was a huge, huge positive. I don't want to take anything away from that. However, I want to remind you guys of something we just saw 4 days ago with Cam Johnson. Or was that 5 now? It doesn't matter. Cam Johnson came back and looked like a frickin' tornado his first game out of the chute. Second game back, they took it off. First of all, he didn't play in it. Third game back, he looked slow. He looked rusty. Because that's how this whole thing works. When guys come back from significant injury, and I would classify both Jonathan Isaac and Khris Middleton as guys coming back from significant injury. Now, obviously, with Isaac, it was a hell of a lot longer. 900 days, by the way, between games for J.I. And I know, like, there's all this personal stuff with Isaac. Please try to just push that aside while we talk about this from a fantasy standpoint. Difficult though it may be, let's just try our best to not worry about that. I don't care if you're rooting for him. I don't care if you're rooting against him. We're looking at this from a pure numbers standpoint. These are big injuries. When guys come back from huge injuries, adrenaline tends to power them that first game back. Because yes, Isaac and Middleton both did some stuff with their G League affiliate. Isaac actually played in G League games. By the way, every time I say G League, I think of that J-Lo and Ben Affleck movie. I know you. Yeah, I know. I'm going to try to really pronounce the G at the end of league going forward. That doesn't really get the adrenaline pumping. A G League game to an NBA player, and I mean this with all the respect in the world, but to an NBA player in the G League, that's a practice game. That's an exhibition for them. The juices are not pumping. The heart rate gets up. It's like an exercise. It's like a workout, basically, where someone's trying a little bit harder to stop you. But just from like a size and power and speed standpoint, it's a workout. It's not a true game. So then you throw them into the real thing. And for Isaac, I think this is probably a bigger thing than it was for Middleton. But you throw them into the real thing now. And for J.I., you have the adrenaline. You have the big crowd, first big crowd he's played in front of in 900 days. That pretty much just lifts you like you're floating. he floated for 10 minutes. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way every ball game. By the second, third game back, typically you start to see these types of the recoveries. Guys go boop up and then and they kind of start the recovery process in their second game back. Now, with Isaac, we know that he is also a permanent monster. So I don't want to try to have this come off as like, oh, he's going to turn into a total pumpkin in his next ball game. But I don't think he's going to have a 37 usage rate every game here during his recovery. So he's probably not going to get almost a shot a minute. Might he get a defensive stat in his time out there? Yeah, probably. I mean, that's what he does. Might he hit a three-pointer? Yeah, I mean, that's a reasonable opportunity for him. But it's not going to be this. You know, he's not going to get 10, 3, and 2 steals with 2 threes every 9 minutes he plays. When he's at 18 minutes, he's not going to average 20 points and 4 steals. So just understand that this was the peak, and then you're going to come down, and it's going to be that slow, more linear incline for both of these guys. So let's talk actually a little bit about Khris Middleton while we're kind of in this mode. Last thing on Jonathan Isaac. I stand by everything that I've said about him in the past. Roto games cap leagues, he makes a ton of sense as a stash. Keeper leagues, makes a ton of sense as a stash. Head-to-head leagues, I don't think you can do it. Middleton is a little bit of a different beast because, for one, he was only out for whatever it was, about a month, a little over a month. I think with this last one, it's been a fits and starts kind of season for Middleton because he came in with an injury that the Bucks, they didn't necessarily lie to us about it per se, but they were a bit disingenuous is probably the best way I could put it in his recovery coming into the season, because they kind of said nothing about him until about like 3 days before the year started. And then they said, oh, by the way, Middleton's not going to be ready to start the year. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. You know, we'll see him in a week, whatever it is. 6 weeks later, tries to play, doesn't work. He basically hasn't played at all this year, but he's been kind of rubbing up against being ready to play a few times this season. So they'll bring him along a little bit faster than Isaac. And the other thing you saw with Middleton is that he didn't have the adrenaline bump game back because he wasn't out long enough and because playing in front of a crowd wasn't that unique to him. It wasn't like a full year recovery. He played in front of a crowd in December, I think. Didn't he play a game in December? Pretty sure he played like 2 games in December. Doesn't matter. Either way, it wasn't that long ago. So you got the rusty game from Middleton right out of the chute here. 8 points, 4 assists. That's not bad. 6 turnovers in 15 minutes. Luckily, this was a perfect game to get him back in there because it was a cakewalk against a tanking Pistons team. He'll move himself up probably where with Isaac, you might literally see Isaac increase his playing time by roughly 1 to 2 minutes per ball game, starting at 9. So it could be a little while. With Middleton, even if you went 2 minutes per ball game, he gets into the low 20s by next week. I think he gets into the low 20s by later this week, frankly. And I think he's in the mid-20s by next week, which is more than enough to start him. Because with Middleton, historically, he's a top 40 range fantasy play in his normal allotment of minutes. He was number 41 last year in 32 minutes per ball game. The beauty of a guy like Middleton, for one, he only shot 44% last year. That's a number we've actually seen get higher for him. I don't want to expect it coming off of all of this injury, but it's a possibility. The real key is, even if you adjusted his minutes down and say, look, by next week, maybe he's playing by the end of this week, let's say he's playing 24 minutes a ball game. 24 minutes is 75% of 32. But I don't think all of his stats would drop off by a full 25% because for a lot of NBA players, you know, the difference between a 6-minute stint per quarter and an 8-minute stint per quarter is, if I'm only in for 6 minutes, I can actually do a little bit more. I can go higher usage in my 6 minutes than I did in my 8 because I got to save myself a little bit more. Is there a drop-off? Of course there's a drop-off. 24 minutes is a lot less than 32. You're not going to get as many rebounds because that's more of I need to be on the court to get these things. It's not going to go with usage. So rebounds might be the thing that would drop off by 25%. Steals would probably drop off by 25% as well. But things like points, assists, turnovers, that might come down by more like 15%. Which again, with Middleton, when you're ranked 40th, if you took 15% away from all of his stuff, he's still probably in the 75, 80 range and then climbing. So we might be, I don't know, I'd probably rest Middleton for one more ball game, unless they come out and they're like, oh, Khris is going to play 24 minutes in our next game, which, when the hell is that? Wednesday? Are the Bucks on Wednesday? They're hosting Denver on Wednesday. If we get word that Middleton's going to go 24 minutes in that game, I'd probably start him. If they say nothing about his minutes limit, I think I keep him bunched because I would assume that his 16-ish, which is what this last ball game was, probably goes up to about 20 in that next ball game. I think Middleton, you probably see go up by 3 or 4 minutes per game. So we might be 2 games away from Khris being startable, where with Jonathan Isaac, we're probably still like 2 weeks instead of 2 games, or like 2 weeks away from possibly being startable. Anything else in this Milwaukee-Detroit game? Absolutely. Hello, Jalen Duren. I think we have a ton of Jalen Duren. I'm not always out in front of stuff. There are a few guys. DeLon Wright, I lagged a little bit behind here lately. There have been guys this year where I've lagged a little bit behind. I'm mad at myself that I lagged a bit on Mark Williams in some roto and keeper formats. Jalen Duren, we were all over it. Like the second he moved into the starting lineup, we got out there on social, on the pod, and we said, do it now. This is the kind of changing of the guard in Detroit. And Duren's been awesome. We've actually seen his defensive stats tick up a little bit here lately. I don't know if that's something that's going to stick. I'm assuming the answer is no on that front. But he is a rebounding Goliath. A rebounding Goliath. You can see very quickly what guys are able to excel at. He's going to be a field goal percent guy. He's a rebounding monster. You've seen his free throw percent actually come back towards the closer to 70 that it was in college, as opposed to what was he? It was winning around 50 earlier this year. So he's not a true punt free throw guy. He's probably going to be high 60s, which will hurt you, but it won't break you. I know what you're thinking. What about a Rudy Gobert, who's in that high 60s range? Well, Gobert tends to take 5 to 7 free throws a game. I don't think Duren's going to be getting the line nearly that often. Because his stuff is all going to be uncontested dunks. It won't be people around. I'd love to see more steals and blocks out of Duren, and maybe things do continue to trend that way. But honestly, at this point, I sort of don't care. He got dropped in a lot of spots because they had a 1-game week and because he was dealing with the ankle stuff. So he's actually out there in some fantasy leagues, which boggles the mind, but is true. No Killian Hayes for Detroit. I wouldn't read too much into what went on in the backcourt of yesterday's ball game. No Isaiah Stewart in yesterday's game either. No, that doesn't change the way I feel about Jalen Duren. He's the center on that team. Stewart's been playing power forward. When Stewart's back, my fear is that Saddiq Bey probably goes back to not quite doing enough. But we know Bojan Bogdanovic is on the trade block. If he gets moved out, then Bey probably locks in at least points league value and, maybe head-to-head leagues where you need scoring and a little bit of rebounding and threes and stuff like that. I don't know that Bey ever holds full roto level value the rest of the way. Bobby Portis left with knee soreness for Milwaukee. I wouldn't read too much into it. This game was a blowout early. He's already, I think, listed as questionable. If he does miss any time, it'll be relatively little. This is a blowout again early, so don't read too much into the minutes for the Milwaukee regulars. This feels like a great opportunity to pause the recorded podcast and welcome all the new live viewers here on YouTube, because I think we have 15 more since the last time I paused. Want to remind all of you guys, please do click that thumbs up button. Some of you have done it on your own. Sweet. Really appreciate that. Please continue doing it. I had set an auto tweet earlier, so I don't actually need to pause the show to get into that. By the way, Shams just sent out another tweet about KD. I want to get that into the recorded pod. But but that's about optimism that he'll be back before the All-Star break and then would play in the All-Star game. That's basically 4 weeks away. But it feels like this is a little weird because I think Woj. I think Woj was saying that they thought it might take more like another month, and now Shams is saying KD is expecting to be back before that. I don't know. Well, I'll get this into the recorded pod, and I'll throw some thoughts in about it. But again, please do click the thumbs up button. Please do subscribe to our YouTube page. We need you. We need you. I know there's new among you that have found this video somehow scouring YouTube. So please subscribe. Please like the video. Means a ton to us. And again, please use the live chat. Come join us. If you're watching live right now, use the live chat. Throw your questions in there. I'm going to get to them at the end of the show. We do a kind of a live chat lightning round at the end of the program. And then if you're watching this on replay, make sure you're with us for our next live show, which tends to be in the 9 o'clock hour Pacific time is when I'm often getting this thing going. For my show, Brew's show tomorrow, we'd be more like 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. We'll try to send out a note when we know exactly when it's going to be. Thursday, I'll be in the morning again. Friday, Brew and I will be together probably at some point in the morning. Sunday with Eric is at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Monday with Joe and Steve, that's at 2 p.m. Pacific time. So we got a lot going on. Okay, let's dive back in. Now, before I get to the next ball game on the board, we did just get another tweet from Shams about KD stating that there's optimism that he'll be back before the All-Star break and that he can then play in the All-Star game. So Durant, look, say what you want about KD. He loves playing basketball, man. I really like that about him. He's goofy on Twitter, and it seems like sometimes he's a little bit sensitive about stuff, but dude loves hooping. And that's good for the NBA. The fact that Kevin Durant wants to be playing is good for the NBA. He's been playing in back-to-backs this year. I don't know if they're going to let him coming back from this injury, but damn it, he's going to try. He's good for basketball, the way he approaches it. LeBron is kind of the same thing. He tries to play in every ball game if he can. These guys that are just like, nah, screw that rest stuff. I get it. Some dudes need it. You know, Kawhi's got this neurodegenerative thing going on, but there's so many guys that are just like, tired. Play, man. If you're not in altitude and you're not getting into a city at like 4 a.m, play. Regardless, this is, again, I think lends some sort of credibility to our, not prediction necessarily, but hope that KD is back between the 4 and 5 week mark from his original injury, which would be another 2 to 3, because 2 weeks from now would be right around the trade deadline. 3 would be the week between the deadline. No, that's the week that the All-Star break starts, actually. My mistake. The All-Star break starts a week after the deadline. So that would be the 5 week mark. So Shams report, this optimism that they're speaking of is saying, well, we hope he's back between the 4 and 5 week mark. So that's kind of what I was hoping for earlier in the show. All right, let's dive into the next ball game. Houston beat Minnesota 119-114. Second 40-burger this week for Jalen Green. If he's starting to get things turned around, he could be a pretty fun player to own, especially on the head-to-head side down the stretch. I think the more interesting stuff from this ball game is actually Tari Eason. Now, I realize this is entirely because of and for both of these guys, frankly, is largely because Kevin Porter Jr. is out. And then for Eason, Jabari Smith Jr. is out. That's sort of floating him as well. But Eason's a fantasy juggernaut. We've seen it, like it's there. The outlines of fantasy value are so very clear with him. When he gets minutes, he gets steals, he gets blocks, he gets rebounds. His percentages are not atrocious, which is saying something because, young dude shooting almost 80% at the free throw line. He doesn't shoot the 3 ball all that much yet. He doesn't score all that much yet. But, I mean, defensive stats and rebounds, the fantasy outline with him is really nice. I don't know that it's going to happen this year is the downside to all of this, because Jabari Smith Jr. is going to come back. He was their hyper lotto pick, so he's going to get to play. if Eric Gordon gets traded, it feels like KJ Martin's the first guy to step up. Now, could he also get moved? Yeah, there's a possibility of that. I just don't know, because right now you've taken basically 60 plus minutes out of the equation, and I don't know that there's a path to that based on the regulars. Eric Gordon is the starter that could get moved at the All-Star break. Jabari Smith Jr. is not getting moved at the break, and neither is Kevin Porter Jr. If KJ Martin gets moved, he was a guy that was coming off the bench for whatever it was, 18 to 23 minutes a ball game anyway. Maybe some of those go to Eason. Is it enough to get him up into the mid-20s after the break? Maybe. He's a maybe stash for post-break. He's very much we want to be ahead of it when the opportunity's there kind of guy. But it's not that clear how soon that'll be. And that's the unfortunate reality there with Eason. For Minnesota, Rudy Gobert came back. And Minnesota is such a Jekyll and Hyde team, man. We've seen them. They went through a stretch where they played a little bit better. Schedule was a tiny bit easier for them during that stretch, but they actually played well against some slightly better teams also. Now, they're all, like most teams in the NBA, they're not very good on the road, and maybe you could pin some of that on this, but this is only the Rockets' 11th win of the year. My God. So Naz Reid can be dropped. That's an easy one. Slow-mo played 12 minutes. If you're wondering why, it's because he had 5 fouls in 12 minutes. Just could never get it going. And frankly, that's probably why they lost this game. Because he's the guy that kind of keeps the wagon from falling apart at the seams with no Cat, effectively. And Cat, we have no idea when he's coming back. So hold on Slow-mo. If you're in a league where someone was like, oh no, 12 minutes, and then punted him, pick him up, put in a waiver claim on him, because he could be doing this for another who knows how long. Chicago beat Atlanta 111-100. Good defense in this one from the Bulls. They've been playing a little bit better, by the way. There was some adversity with Chicago. Things got a little ugly, but they're 6-4 their last 10. They've won 3 ball games in a row. They have a very winnable game on a back-to-back against the Pacers, a team that they are now tied in the standings with tonight. So Bulls have actually a kind of a relatively large ball game coming up this evening. No, DeAndre Hunter is dealing with asthma symptoms, so hopefully he's okay. That can be a little bit scary. I think most of us know someone who has dealt with an asthma attack. It's pretty frightening. But no Onyeka Okongwu in this game either. So a lot of Clint Capella. He won't play 36 minutes every ball game, but Okongwu can be dropped in most formats because he's back to being a backup. Just be ready in case Capella ever has to miss a ball game, because he's a dunkmeister. Okongwu is, every time that opportunity presents itself. I maintain that Bogdan Bogdanovic can claw his way inside the top 100. He's not that far out of it. He continues to have poor shooting games, but he also continues to get enough shots and sort of ball handling responsibilities to get to that mark. The Hawks just seem like kind of a little bit of a sickly team this year. I know they too actually had been playing a little bit better, mostly because Trae Young had been playing a little bit better. The Hawks are not as bad on the road as most teams, but they didn't look it in this one. They just need a better game from Trae Young. He'd been better lately. This one, he wasn't that great. 13 assists is fine, but Clint Capella was kind of the only reliable dude on the team in this one. So no massive adjustments. Bogdan got dropped in a bunch of spots. I've picked him up in a few places. Head-to-head, I see no reason not to just play him most ball games. I know he sits on some back-to-backs. Roto, I've got him on my bench. When he warms up, that's the time. Alex Caruso is kind of an interesting name on the other side. I know Patrick Williams is probably going to get more of the headlines because he had a double-double at 18 and 10, but Caruso with 4 more defensive stats. These guys are just so close to consistent fantasy value. I just know we've all been there a million times. The second you pick up a guy like Patrick Williams or Caruso is the day that they give you 4 points, 3 rebounds, and a steal. You just know it's coming. Man, Caruso was a monster when DeRozan was out. I don't think the Bulls are blowing this thing up at the trade deadline. They are in the 10 seed right now. And again, they've been playing better than probably 2 of the teams in front of them. So maybe they could even get like a home court on the play-in tournament or something like that. There isn't a long way for them to go beyond that spot. But to me, it still would take DeRozan or Levine kind of getting out of the way for Caruso or Patrick Williams to have consistent fantasy value. You're going to get these games every once in a while where they look good, and then you're going to get the opposite side of it where it's like untenably low and uncomfortable. But it's so close. And when guys are so close like that, I guess the term we typically use is schedule streamer. Play them when the schedule is good. Utah beat Charlotte. This was a pretty easy one. Mark Williams had 5 defensive stats for the Hornets, who just couldn't get anything to drop offensively. Dennis Smith Jr. is a guy I thought about dropping in a few spots, and then I ended up hanging on to him because he was shooting poorly, and it felt like that was a number that was going to sort of positively regress. And that's kind of what happened here. He still got 29 minutes. He shot the ball better. So 15 points, 9 assists. The only thing he didn't do was get the defensive stats, which is usually the thing for DSJ that's locked in. So I'm holding on to him. I still think Gordon Hayward might just be at the end of his NBA career. I don't know what happened, but he's been so bad this season, and it's just continued. And I know that like there's still analysts that are saying he needs to be held on to, and that's fine. I strongly disagree. He's been terrible. He's been terrible. So I think you can move on the Hayward front. But it is nice to see that Dennis Smith Jr. still got enough playing time in this one. And I'm holding on to him in a few spots where, again, I need assists, defensive stats. That's going to be the sort of tip of the spear with him. And then you hope that he can get you like a dozen points or something. Because the opportunity's there as long as LaMelo's out. Utah, no huge surprises there. Walker Kessler's minutes down a bit. He had 5 fouls in 22 minutes. You can pin a little bit at least on that. Markkanen, Conley looked good again. Lower assists, but I like that he's taking more shots. That's been a big thing for me. And then basically everybody else is in schedule stream zone. Vanderbilt, Beasley, Sexton. These guys are all schedule plays. I am curious what happens when Kelly Olynyk comes back. I think you probably see Beasley go back to the bench and Olynyk play now power forward instead of center, where he and kind of Vanderbilt were interchangeable in that starting 5. Now it'll probably be Olynyk and Kessler. Portland beat San Antonio 147-127. This was the cakewalk game. I thought maybe the Blazers would make an adjustment to their starting 5 since you knew a win was coming. They didn't. And a win came anyway. And Nurkic bounced back after that terrible game against the Lakers. Spurs is the side you're kind of paying more attention to here. They've started to bubble wrap Jakob Poeltl. Yes, he had 5 fouls in 16 minutes, but he's not going to play over about 24 minutes right now. The interesting note in this one is that Zach Collins only played 22 of the remaining, what it would have been, 32-ish center minutes. Gorgie Jang played 6. Isaiah Roby played a handful of what I think ended up kind of being center minutes in the game as well. Some of it was blowout stuff. Here's the thing. Zach Collins has become a little bit of a polarizing trade deadline stash, largely because, and accurately, mind you, his upside as a full-time starter caps out at probably about the 80 range. He doesn't have the fantasy game to be like a top 50 guy the way that Jakob Poeltl does, because Poeltl, big-time field goal percent, rebounds, steals, blocks, all that good stuff. Collins probably gets you field goal percent. He's a better shooter than Poeltl, but the rebounds will be lower. The blocks will be lower. Free throw shooting will be better, obviously. The turnovers will be a little bit higher. He just doesn't have as fantasy-friendly a game. I still think that Jakob Poeltl is maybe the most likely big man to get moved at the trade deadline because of how clear it is that his team is tanking his contract situation, and that the Spurs are kind of at the front end of a rebuild here, as opposed to, and this is sort of a weird thing to say, but like Mason Plumlee, who's also at the end of his contract, but on a Hornets team that was in the play-in last year. And we know when that Hornets team is healthy, they're basically around play-in level because LaMelo's good and Rozier's been pretty good. Hayward's been awful, but they'll bring in some young guys that can kind of fill those spots. They might want to retain Plumlee, and the best way to do that is to have him finish out the season there. So I don't know that he's a lock to get moved necessarily in the way that it does kind of feel like Poeltl. Like, there's no point at all in San Antonio hanging on to him. With Poeltl, you just take what you get because they're very much at the front end of this rebuild, where with the Hornets, this might be kind of a one-off. Rockets are still in tank mode. Pistons are still in tank mode. So, I mean, those are the teams where you look at the veterans a little bit more, Spurs, et cetera. Is there anything else to do with this Spurs team? I mean, Jeremy Sohan had a better ball game here, but I still don't like his fantasy game, so I'm pretty much leaving the rest of it alone. And then Sacramento blew out the zombie Grizzlies. They were resting Ja and Steven Adams for this one. Dylan Brooks left a little bit early. He played most of the ball game before taking off, so that one really didn't have an impact. Xavier Tillman got the start, I think mostly because starting Brandon Clark against Domantas Sabonis, he would have just gotten swallowed in that ball game. And Tillman had a decent fantasy line. I don't expect this to continue. Steven Adams almost never misses more than one game in a row. And then on the Ja side, it's very much a one-to-one thing with Tyus Jones. For Sacramento, Trey Lyles had one of his big bench explosion games, came at the expense of Kevin Huerter in this one, but that stuff kind of comes and goes a little bit. You're not adding Trey Lyles. He's not nearly consistent enough. If you wanted to play him in like a 16-teamer when the Kings have a back-to-back, that's totally fine with me, but 12-teamers, And, hey, look who got good. What are we now? November, December, January, 3 months into the season. Keegan Murray, excuse me. Rebounds continue to trend up for Murray. The efficiency continues to trend up for Murray. He's still not doing much besides just shoot the three ball, but he had 20 points and 5 threes, so it's kind of hard to argue with that. And that's why, remember, in November and early December, I said this is the time if you want to buy low on him, because it's the same thing. Our medium-term memory as a society is such dog do. Rookies suck at the beginning. Paolo Banchero got off to kind of a quick start this year, so he wasn't in full suck mode to start the year, but a lot of the other ones were. And then they slowly figure it out. And now with Murray, he's in the enviable spot of being on a team that's built offensively very nicely. So his looks are going to be better. It's going to be easier for him to settle into that better efficiency that we kind of knew was going to be coming. I'd love to see him get a couple buckets closer to the hoop. Relying on three-pointers this heavily does create a big gap in how your shooting numbers can look on any given night. But you can see it. Every 2 weeks, he's gotten better, and this is why you buy low on rookies 6 weeks into the season. Let some jag do the drafting and become disappointed over the first month and a half to 2 months, and then you get to pick up the pieces at a bargain rate. Every damn year. Same thing. Every damn year. This is another opportunity here. I don't think too many new live viewers since our last pod. Maybe some of you left and some of you signed on. But if you're new, hey, please do click that like button. Use our chat room. I'm just a few minutes away from doing the YouTube live chat now. We're coming up on it real quick. And subscribe to the YouTube page. Quick one here. Just a quick reminder. Let's go in and do the preview, and then we'll wrap up the recorded side. But remember, when I say goodbye to the recorded side, people, everyone on YouTube, you guys stick around. Okay, let's turn our attention to the upcoming slate. I love that this week so far has been much more balanced. That's so much better. This is actually the Wednesday card. Whoopsies. Got to go through and switch my browser window. There's the Tuesday card. Here's what we're looking at tonight, what we're watching for. Chicago at Indiana, the Bulls on the back-to-back here. This is a ball game that's actually relatively important for Chicago, and Indy's been slumping. I'm totally fine with moving on from Andrew Nembhard. I think if there isn't another juicy streamer out there, you can hang on to him, but TJ McConnell has ended up really pushing out in front in that battle. Nembhard more like a schedule stream level numbers as a fill-in here. Boston at Miami. Curious who plays for the Celtics in that one. Al Horford's resting. Marcus Smart is out. Jalen Brown just got ruled out. Malcolm Brogdon still out for personal reasons. So the Celtics really are cut down to their prime. We don't know about Robert Williams yet. That's the big question mark right now. He's still the one that's kind of hanging in the balance. If he plays, obviously you play him. If he doesn't, Grant Williams almost becomes a must-play guy in that scenario, because that would mean both Horford and Robert Williams and Jalen Brown out. I don't know who's going to score. I mean, Jason Tatum's going to have to put up 60 by himself if he's playing in this game. Or maybe Boston just sits this whole thing out. They might just rest everybody. At which point, yeah, then you're going Derek White. You're going Grant Williams. You probably go Peyton Pritchard in a game like that. This becomes a real interesting streamer zone for Boston. Miami, there was a report that came out that the Heat want Kyle Lowry to shoot more. So cool. That would be great if that actually happens. I'm good with holding Lowry and Victor Oladipo. Cleveland, nothing. They're nothing because Donovan Mitchell's supposed to make his return here. So nothing. Knicks, Emmanuel Quickley to me is the only question mark with New York. If Quickley plays, then you don't play Jericho Sims. If Quickley sits, you can, I think, play Sims. Denver is all about whether or not Nikola Jokic plays. Michael Porter Jr. has already been ruled out, so Bruce Brown is startable. If Jokic sits as well, you could stream Zeke Naji. Pelicans. Brandon Ingram got upgraded to doubtful. Sometimes you see guys get upgraded to doubtful and then play. So there is, I'd give it like a 20% chance we see Ingram tonight. He hasn't been ruled out yet as of now, but that still means it's an 80% chance he's not playing and then comes back for the next one probably. If Ingram comes back, I would consider benching almost all of my other streamers just to see what happens. Even though Ingram's probably only going to play probably like with Middleton, like about 16 minutes when he first comes back. They're not going to push him too hard. So Trey Murphy probably still safe. Herb Jones maybe still safe. It's all going to get a little bit messy in New Orleans here over the next 2 to 3 games for them. Wizards, I'd love to see what they look like with no Rui and injured Kristaps Porzingis. Daniel Gafford, in my estimation, is a play. Denny Avdia is sort of right on the edge. We talked about it yesterday. Without ball handling duties, I'm much less excited about Avdia. And Monte Morris and Bradley Beal and Delon Wright, speaking of, add Delon Wright. Those guys have the ball handling responsibilities for this team, so they don't really need Avdia to do it. For Dallas, we've seen there really isn't a good Christian Wood fill-in. It's more shots for Dinwiddie and Tim Hardaway Jr. and just even more for poor Luka to try to do. Charlotte, we just talked about them. I actually think Dennis Smith Jr. is still a pretty decent stream. He's like a one hamburger guy if you're referring to my Twitter threads. Nothing else so much with Charlotte. Phoenix, how does Cam Johnson look is really the question for me there. You saw the rusty game last time out after the adrenaline game. We talked about that earlier in the podcast. I expect Cam to look just a kind of a little bit better, like every 2 to 3 games. So hopefully a little bit better in this one. And then, Chris Paul being back changes things for that team pretty dramatically, just kind of in terms of how he makes them function. DeAndre Ayton is expected to miss this ball game. He's listed as doubtful right now with the flu. That probably just means that Dario Saric is like kind of head-to-head streamable, not good enough for Roto. Kind of the same story for me on Torrey Craig with Phoenix. I'm not going to do a lot of dumpster diving with them now that Cam Johnson's around to take a bunch of shots, and Chris Paul and Mikal Bridges. It's about as far as I'd go on the Roto side. And then the marquee game of the night. It was supposed to be Boston-Miami, but the Celtics are sitting everybody. And then it might have been Denver-New Orleans, but they might miss everybody. Is Clippers and Lakers. This one became a fun one. Both teams playing better lately. Clippers had been slumping. They've won a couple in a row. Lakers have actually been playing relatively well for a while now. Their losses have all been by the skin of their teeth. This is a huge game for the Lakers because right now they're a game back of the Thunder, Warriors, and Timberwolves to jump from 11th all the way up to 9th. And they're only 2 games back of the Clippers. Clippers are good at home and not as good actually at home and on the road. This is technically a road game, but it's in their home building. The thing about the Clippers is that they can defend typically. Matchup-wise, the Clippers are one of the worst matchups in basketball for the Lakers because the Lakers don't have wings. They've got Troy Brown Jr. and then Juan Toscano Anderson, who should, I mean, I love the kid. Seems like one of the nicest dudes in the NBA, but he probably should be more of a mop-up kind of guy. How do you stop Kawhi and Paul George with the Lakers personnel? LeBron is probably going to have to do some of it, but he's not very fast these days, which means he's probably going to have to deal with Kawhi, who's not really beating people off the dribble, but with strength typically. I don't think the Lakers want LeBron dealing with Kawhi all game long. So then you put Troy Brown on Paul George. Do you use Pat Beverly on, I don't know, George? He's not tall enough. And then on the other side, the Clippers can defend because they've got Kawhi and PG to deal with LeBron and just kind of a big body behind them in Zubats to go get those rebounds. The Lakers have been struggling in that element. I don't know in this ball game from a handicapping standpoint. I don't know. Thomas Bryant is probably going to have to be in there because they're going to need him badly on the boards to deal with Zubats, who's likely too big for Wenyen Gabriel. And then the Lakers are going to have to do a good job of trying to keep people in front of them. So do I stream Thomas Bryant? I'd say slight lean to yes, because I think they need his size more than they need Gabriel's ability to move laterally. The Clippers are not what you'd call kind of a traditional pick and roll team. The pick and roll they run is usually to get a switch and then let Paul George or Kawhi go ISO. So they might do that with Thomas Bryant, get him on one of those guys and let them isolate. Does that force the Lakers to go small with like a LeBron and then Zubats picks on them? To me, this is a bad matchup for the Lakers, but they're in a pick your poison spot. And that's why it's so hard for me to make the call on Thomas Bryant. Do they leave him in there for the rebounds, or do they yank him out so that they can switch a pick and roll a little bit better? We'll find out. Maybe that's 24 minutes apiece. Slightest of leans towards starting him. But also when I get nervous, when I'm on the fence about a guy, I almost always flip back to not doing so. So that's what's coming up tonight. Should be a fun one. Thank you, as always, for listening, everybody. We can go on and get this recorded side wrapped up. As always, if you're listening to the recorded podcast, I would say come join us on the live side tomorrow. We'll have another one tomorrow on the live side. You can hang out. You can chat in the YouTube chat room. You can hit me with questions that I answer at the end of the show. You get to see my ugly mug. You get to see the box scores and the upcoming games as I'm talking about them. There's a lot of fun reasons to hang out with us over on YouTube. Hopefully, I'll see you guys over there. So to the recorded listeners, I say, love you guys. Thank you, as always, for tuning in here to Fantasy NBA Today. Please do whatever you can to help us spread the word, whether that's a retweet or a like or telling a buddy, anything. At Dan Vespers on Twitter as well. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow to recap the Tuesday games and break it all down again. So long. All right, live YouTube viewers. Hey, another like 10 of you showed up during my last little segment there. I think a lot of you actually do seem to like the look ahead part of the show. So cool. The live chat. Throw some stuff in there. We're about to get into that. Also, YouTube people that haven't done it yet, please do find me on Twitter. This is the handle at Dan Vespers, or you can just go into the show description because it's like the third thing down. In fact, I'm just going to post it in the chat room right now. So if you're watching the show, you should have been able to see this pop up in the chat. That's the link right there. I probably should have put a space in front of it so you could just click it easier, but you can just copy and paste that in and get in there. Let's do some questions now, huh? Let's do some questions. Scrolling all the way to the top. Brandon Marcus, the amazing host. One of two of them, actually. Matt Matawaran's also on there. We have two. Brandon, one of the two amazing hosts of our Clippers podcast, formerly of Brandon Day here on this show, an expert at buy lows and sell highs. What type of player would you try targeting in a 2-for-1, giving away Plumlee and Clarkson in a 10-team league? Jakob Poeltl, Desmond Bane, Trae Young, top 50. I don't think you can go top 50. Neither one of those guys individually is good enough. In a points league, that would make it a little bit easier to target top 50. In a category league, you probably have to shoot for more like 60 to 75 range. I think you could probably go higher than Pirtle right now. So somewhere between, and then people are going to value Trae Young higher than his actual rank. So I know he's like in that 50 range this year because he hasn't been that good. But you kind of need to go for someone who has like the name value of a 60 kind of guy, like a Jeremy Grant or a D'Angelo Russell or something, or like a CJ McCollum, something that everyone just sort of like pictures them as a 60 range guy. Should I drop Thomas Bryant and stash Mark Williams? Can it wait until after the Spurs game tomorrow? Because Bryant's probably going to this is YouTube now. This isn't the recorded side. He's gonna teabag the Spurs tomorrow. I'm a little bit, I guess I can be a little bit more vulgar here, right? I'm not gonna curse. That's still not my way. But can you hold on to Thomas Bryant through the Spurs game? I don't think AD plays in that one. I think we see AD in Boston on the road trip. But then on Thursday, then I would say yes. Would you trade Jokic and Porzingis for Harden, Bam, and Levine? No. Jokic is probably going to be the best player in fantasy basketball the rest of the way. I'm not trading him away for almost any reason at all. And I'm especially not trading him away with Porzingis, who's going to be out for, a couple of weeks here. But he was an early second rounder. That's right next to Harden, guys. I don't mean to alarm you or anything. But Porzingis was 19 and Harden was 12. They're not separated by that much. A little bit, yeah. I mean, Harden is more valuable. But Jokic is almost worth like 2 Hardens this year. And then Bam and Levine are fine, but they're back a bit from these other guys. Adebayo's in the 30s. Levine is in the late 40s. Honestly, it would have to be Harden and Bam for Jokic. That's probably what it would take for me to part with Jokic. And even that might not be enough. What do I do about Josh Hart and Bogdan Bogdanovic in a points league? Okay, so points league does make this a little bit more complicated. They're probably streamable in points leagues. 12 teamers. I'd try to hold. Hart's been up and down. Bogdan at least has like the consistent number of shots typically. Try to hold, but if you have to stream, it's not going to be that big of a deal for you. Dan, I have too many assists. It's an okay problem to have. I actually have that in a few spots as well. I need points, threes, free throw percent. Potential players I can trade are Kyle Lowry, Domantas Sabonis, Alperen Şengün, Kevin Porter Jr., and Nikola Jokic. I'm third from the bottom in free throw and points. Well, if you want to make headway there, Kevin Porter Jr. would be the guy to move because moving Lowry is not going to help you in free throws. I guess Kevin Porter helps you in points more than Lowry does. But free throws, I mean, you get the guys, you get the anchors out that are weighing you down. It's a pretty easy to move up the standing. So I would take Kevin Porter Jr. as soon as he comes back. And where is he? He's like around, I think he's around 100 right now, something like that. He's only at like 6 assists per ball game. But if you wanted to find someone in that range that shot the free throw better, it shouldn't be too tough. Let's see. Where's Mike Conley? He's 80%, but he helps you in assists still. So you're giving up scoring there. Harrison Barnes, possibly. So you're not losing much in scoring, and he does help you in free throws quite a bit. Barnes is gonna be lower. You're trading down there, but he does get you the categories you're looking for. If you wanted to try to move up the board, you could package Kevin Porter Jr. and Kyle Lowry, and you could aim for someone like D'Lo, which, you basically don't lose any of the categories you were already good at, but you do help yourself in free throw by a decent amount. And we don't lose assists so much. And that might be, maybe that's the way to go. Take those two guys, put them together, and aim for somebody ranked between like 55 and 70. Jalen McDaniels a drop in 12-teamers? No, I don't think so. Charlotte was quite bad in yesterday's ball game. And he still had 9 and 9 with a steal and a block. There's a lot to like for me on. Oh, Jaden McDaniels. Sorry, wrong McDaniels. Oopsies. Where the hell's that Minnesota situation? Yeah, I mean, no, I don't think he's a drop. He's number 96. He's always going to be right on that borderline. This is a competitive 12-teamer. He's a hold. If this is a less competitive 12-teamer, he's a stream. Would you trade Darius Garland and Rob Williams to get Tyrese Halliburton? Yes. I had to think about that one. Yes, I would. Do you prefer Jabari Smith Jr., DeLon Wright, or Mark Williams rest of season? I'm gonna go. If this is head-to-head, I probably go Jabari over DeLon over Mark. And if this is Roto, I probably go DeLon over Jabari over Mark. I'm still not sure. Running out of water. I'm still not sure that Plumlee gets traded. But yeah, I mean, there is the stash element there. Yeah, I mean, if you want to go Mark Williams as trade deadline's only 2 weeks away. All right, you know what? Screw it. Let's rearrange this. Let's go Williams at the top because he's a stash. And in 2 weeks, if Plumlee doesn't get traded, then you just cast him off into the ocean. And then for head-to-head, Jabari over DeLon, and for Roto, the other way around. I traded Karl-Anthony Towns for OG and Slow-Mo in a head-to-head league that I wasn't doing great, and I probably could have made the playoffs sitting on cap and where he's not going to be useful come playoff time. Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be back by your head-to-head playoffs. That's right. Jalen Duren found his passport, and now he's hammer dunking again. Jalen McDaniels or Larry Nance? I'll go Jalen there. I know you guys know I love Larry Nance. I just don't trust him right now. And on the head-to-head side, he's hurt all the time. I'm praying the Pistons don't trade away Boyan. They're going to trade him. They're in tank mode. There's just no reason for them to even be marginally competitive down the stretch, and they can probably get a first with as good as he's been. Maybe a super late first, but like a heavily protected one. I think they'll trade Boyan Bogdanovic. Hey, Dan, Wendell Carter Jr. or Jalen Duren the rest of the way? I'm going to go Jalen Duren, believe it or not. Wendell Carter Jr. is, I like him, but his fantasy game is severely capped by the fact that he has no defensive stats whatsoever, which might end up being the case with Duren. But we're seeing Duren might average 11 rebounds a game, which I love to have those guys that are elite. Now, that doesn't mean drop Wendell Carter Jr. for Duren. That means go trade him. You can get something for Wendell Carter. 12-team 9-cat. First place with a 5-game lead. Should I trade Dame for Kevin Durant? Oh, man. I don't know. I think you got to hang on to your first-round playoff bye, especially with Porzingis and Kevin Porter Jr. hurt already. You could take some 6-3, 7-2 losses there, and all of a sudden you're in third place, and now you're scraping for. Maybe it depends a little bit on when your playoffs start. If your playoffs start in like mid-March, then I might do it because there's time for you to climb back up to the top. But if your playoffs start right after the All-Star break, I don't think I would do it. Someone offered me Kyrie and Gafford for Giannis. Do I take the risk on the big prize? May try to negotiate just Kyrie. Your grammar on this one is confusing me a little bit. I'm assuming you're getting Giannis. That's why you're calling it the big prize. I'm going to say yes. Points league in this one. Take the Giannis side. You want the big one, and then Porzingis is only going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks, so Gafford slides back to that streamer. What's the move with Okongwu? Yeah, I mean, you could stash him in a Roto league if it's not hurting you, because Capella probably gets a game off here and there, and even if you only get like 5 to 10 games out of Okongwu the rest of the way, I think as a starter, that's probably still worth it. Roster spots. Kind of depends how many bench slots you have. If you feel like 5 bench slots, I think I'd sit on him. If you only have like 2 or 3, I don't know that I would. Yeah, I like both of these guys. Gafford and DeLon Wright is the question here. I like DeLon Wright. I like Daniel Gafford. I think the Gafford one is a bit more tied to the Porzingis thing, but I like them both right now. Jalen Williams or Daniel Gafford in a points league? And that's the end of the water, so I better make this count. I think I like Gafford. Oh, good. Coughing. That's going to be great for the guy who just finished his water. I think I like Gafford for the next couple of weeks. I just take a swing. Maybe that's more of a 9-cat thing. Slightly into Gafford. Would you trade? This is like the same question we had up above. Points league. Yes, I would trade Kyrie for Giannis. Would you drop Lowry or slow-mo for Keegan Murray? I would drop. Oh, man, that's a tough one. Because we don't know if Cat's coming back anytime soon. I probably dropped slow-mo for Murray and then just hope that Cat shows up. Would you drop Fultz, Lowry, or slow-mo for Keegan Murray? I think I would still make it slow-mo. Do you still collab with Jonas and Brewski and Bogman? I miss hearing you guys on Real Big Three. So the answer is I wish. The In This League guys, Bogman and the Welsh, they don't cover basketball anymore. So unfortunately, we don't get to do shows with Bogman. Joe Orico, who hosts our baseball fantasy show, he just did a show with the Welsh like 5 days ago, I think. So luckily, those guys still get to work with the In This League team. They're awesome, by the way. In This League fantasy, at In This League on Twitter. They're some of our best buddies in the fantasy landscape. Brewski, yes, he's my boss. I collaborate with him in a Slack channel like 15 times a day. And then he and I are going to be doing shows on Fridays here. But Jonas, not as much right now because I don't know how much of this I can say on air. So I'm going to be a little bit tight-lipped. But when Jonas was part of the layoffs at NBC, I don't think he was initially allowed to do other fantasy things. I don't know how much I'm going to stop before I say something that gets me in trouble. What's your beef with Jonathan Isaac? Fantasy basketball wise, none. On the personal side, he kind of got himself into a little bit of stuff with his team, like not kneeling with his teammates and COVID stances and stuff like that. I know that a lot of the basketball community is super annoyed with him. I just want to try to put that aside when we talk about it from a fantasy standpoint. And I felt like it required just a little bit of a preface. Because every time I talk about him on Twitter, someone's like, boo this man. Jared, I'm looking at you, man. And I don't disagree with you, but also I want his fantasy stats. Would you drop Cam Johnson or slow-mo for the player below? The players below are Kelly Olynyk, Victor Oladipo, Kelly Oubre, Bruce Brown. I would probably drop slow-mo when Oubre comes back. But for now, I think I would just sit on it. You're making sort of a stat call there. Slow-mo is going to give you a ton of defensive stats and some rebounds and assists and stuff like that. Oladipo is going to give you a little more scoring, but also still has a pretty good steals. Bruce Brown is actually a lot like slow-mo in fantasy, but lower rebounding, probably more three-pointers. I mean, you're calling it on stats. Cam Johnson is the one player on that list that I'm absolutely positively holding under all circumstances. Should I sell high on Terry Rozier? I mean, what is selling high on Rozier right now? If you can get a top 50 guy for him, I would. I don't think you can. I think it's probably better to just hope that he continues to rumble a little bit. NBA scouts should follow players from the German league. All right, fair enough. Let's see. Is your name Daniel? Is that Danielle? Did I get that right? I can't read I need vowels to read the last name. I can still read a little bit of Hebrew. Is that Danielle? Hopefully he's still watching and can tell me if I got that right. Thoughts on keeping Middleton? Yeah, what are you doing? Stop it, Angel or Angel. Stop it. He played his first game in a month and a half. Cut the man a break. Science teacher. Oh, I like that for the name. Cool, man. What are the possibilities to see Reddish and Bamba away from their teams with a trade? Do you believe Reddish deserves a stash? No, he's not good enough. And he's not going to a place where he's going to play like 35 minutes and take 15 shots. Same story with Bamba. All these are backups. Wherever they go, they're backups. They're just hoping to go to a place where for Reddish, he actually gets to see the floor, and for Bamba, a team that's maybe trying to win that isn't in development mode for other centers. Michael Porter Jr. or Harrison Barnes? I'll go MPJ by a little bit there. Do you think Tari Eason will get minutes after the deadline when Kevin Porter Jr. comes back, and or if Gordon gets traded? I don't actually, and it really upsets me to say it. I don't think his minutes change that much. I think if Gordon gets moved, you also need KJ Martin moved. Both of those guys get moved, then it's Eason time. And so to that end, maybe you do the 2-week stash because it's possible they both get traded. But I wouldn't say it's probable. Do you think I could get Tatum for Sabonis? No. Or I could try to get KD and someone for Jokic. No, don't trade Jokic either. Tatum is ranked way ahead of Sabonis. And I say way ahead because first rounders are so unbelievably valuable. Tatum is 7, Sabonis is 24. Look at the board and make your targets there, but also don't trade away Jokic. He's too good. Rank these point guards. Fultz, Lowry, and Hayes. Lowry over. Oh, injury risk should be factored in. Yeah, I'm still going Lowry over Fultz over Hayes. Hayes is so low end compared to the other two dudes there. Fultz or Hayes. And is Killian must roster if you're not tanking field goal percent if willing to trade for him? No, I don't think Killian Hayes is a must roster player, actually. I do think Fultz probably is. ESPN Points League, would you rather have Cam Johnson or Jalen Duren? Ooh, man, that's a good one. Honestly, I don't know. I like them both a lot. Oh, man, that's like this is unfair. I like these guys both a ton. I'm going to go Cam. I just think that it's a little bit safer because he's going to score a bunch. And in a points league, it's easier to have your fantasy game built on on scoring when it's like the most reliable category. Jalen Duren's rebounding is what his stuff is going to be built on, and that's good. But his points, I think, are going to fluctuate a lot, and his really good field goal percent isn't going to help you all that much. And there aren't going to be many assists. I don't think he gets a ton of defensive stats. So I'll lean Cam Johnson to this one, but I like both of these guys a lot. And, hey, good for me. I read a tiny Hebrew name on a live YouTube show without vowels. Look at that. I still got it, baby. It's like I could be bar mitzvahed all over again. The pride of 1996. My bar mitzvah year. There you go. Now you know how old Dan is. Hi, a few of you guys joined us late. We're just finishing up the YouTube live chat. If there's a question you want to pop in there in the next like 20 seconds, do it. Otherwise, we're wrapping this thing up because we've been live a long time today. I'm starving and it's only 10:30. Maybe I'm just famished. I need food and I need a little bit of rest. All right, no more questions coming in. Thank you, everybody. Hey, last chance, end of the show. Please hit that like button before you close the window. And please subscribe to our YouTube page. Follow me on Twitter. There's a question on the way out. That's not my Twitter handle anymore. PJ versus Nurk. Nurk. Give me the Nurk alert. I want the upside guy there. Give me Nurk. There's the Twitter handle again. At Dan Bespris. Or again, let's see. Where did I copy paste that in here? There it is. You can just zip, copy paste that link in. You're good to go. Or for those watching on mobile, it's probably easiest to just go into the show description. It's in the show description. What else do I want to tell you guys before I click the button to turn this thing off? Next show. Next show will be probably like just after 9 o'clock Pacific time tomorrow. And then Brewski's debut of his live show will be tomorrow, probably either at 3 or 4 p.m. Pacific time. So I'll have 2 live shows on YouTube. Tomorrow on Wednesday. I almost forgot. There's still 40 some of you watching. Let me get the link and pop it into our live thread. This is the coolest freaking thing. Stephen Bagel, the host of the Bird Rights Pod, which is our front office show. There's the link. If you can click that or figure out how to copy and paste it in or whatever. The Sports Ethos is doing a 30-team mock trade deadline exercise that's the landing page for all of our trade deadline coverage. So there's a 30-team mock deadline with experts from every team. All 30 teams have a GM assigned to them from across the NBA media landscape that are actively making trades as if they were running that franchise right now. And it's a really cool way to see how teams consider their contracts, the salaries that are on the books, the personnel, the goals, what offers they're getting. So these guys are like legitimately working the phones with each other like it's a real trade deadline. It's super cool. Also, our fantasy division has a running rumor mill and executed trade page on that where you can get the quick breakdowns. And then the deep dives are for Fantasy Pass members of our premium service. So please do check that out. It's super cool. And again, that's Stephen Bagel over the Bird Rights Pod. And there was a question that popped in here before I sign off. Alyssa, I like to see women in the fantasy space. For goodness sake, so many dudes around here. JSJ or Gafford? Rest of season. See, now that's the tough part because it's Gafford right now, and it's not close because Jabari Smith is out for however long, a game or two more. And Gafford is going to stomp probably while Porzingis is gone. But rest of season, I think I got to go Jabari Smith because Porzingis is going to come back at some point. And we've seen Gafford moves a little bit more towards kind of fringy at that level. And you have to hope that the young guy kind of starts to figure things out here as he gets settled in the way that a lot of the young guys do. But of course, that's going to mean the Rockets have to actually work him into the offense a little bit more. All right, last time, please like, please subscribe. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. I'm out now. Hour and frickin' 20 minutes on this thing. I'm dead. Goodbye.